Good evening, everybody. My name is Colin Slaughter, and I'm president of the Conservative Student Coalition, which consists of college students throughout the Treasure Valley, whose goal are to I'm going to go my note cards. Didn't get to practice this speech beforehand, so I'm going to... Basically, the CSC is tired of the federal government overstepping its boundaries. We, the students, have taken the initiative to host speakers on our Treasure Valley campuses that promote limited government, private property, the rule of law, and all the other elements that are outlined in our Constitution. Before we get started tonight, I'd like to make a couple of announcements. If you still have a question card, please make sure you turn in to your nearest usher before the speech begins. We will be entertaining some of those during the final 15 minutes of the program. I'd also like to take a minute to thank our co-sponsors tonight, the Idaho Freedom Foundation, Idaho Rights Foundation, and the Campaign for Liberty. Without these organizations, these events would not be possible. I'd also like to thank students Aaron Marler, Lauren Pounds, Joe Bunt, and Trevor Grigg for all of their help in organizing the speech tonight. Before we get started with the speech, I'd like to call Wayne Hoffman, Executive Director of the Idaho Freedom Foundation, to the stage to present their Lifetime Achievement Award.
Well, thank you, Colin. I really appreciate all the work that you and the rest of the students at the College of Idaho, Boise State University, Northwest Nazarene University, and the University of Idaho are doing to promote free market principles on our college campuses. We badly need it, and if we can't get it from the college students, we're just at a lost cause. Guys, I like to say that I have the best job in the entire world. And the reason I say that is because I get to talk about freedom and liberty all day and to fight for those values that have made this country great. And what's so wonderful about it is on days like the one we experienced on Sunday, where the federal government, where the Congress voted to give the federal government this new role and tell every American that they need to buy health insurance whether they want it or not, I get to hear, that's right, I get to hear from people like you who are determined to make a difference and see to it that our rights are going to be upheld. We actually have, as part of the Idaho Freedom Foundation on our website, idahofreedom.net, an opportunity for you guys to stand up and say, enough's enough, and to join with our organization as well as the states across this country who are fighting the decision of Congress to make every American buy health insurance. I hope you'll join us on that effort. Our organization is about a year old. We started last January as the last free market think tank in the country to be formed in any of the 50 states. Every other state in the country had a free market think tank up to that point. Now, what's interesting about that, however, is that the original free market think tank started here in Idaho. It was called the Center for the Study of Market Alternatives. And guys like Ralph Smead and Morris Clements were behind the formation of a stellar organization that promoted the values that we hold in such high regard. Last year, we decided to put out to the Idaho public the opportunity to nominate Idahoans as Friends of Freedom, folks who deserve recognition for all their hard work in promoting the values that has made our country strong. Well, one of the awards we decided to give out was what we called the Lifetime Achievement Award. We received from that solicitation about 24 nominations. And every one of those nominations contained the name Ralph Sneed. I want to say that was a very special time to look through all those nominations and read all the touching comments about Ralph. But before I present the award to Ralph, I want to relay to you the reason which that award is so special to me. In 2008, after the last congressional campaign, I was trying to decide what it was I was going to do with my life. I was working for a member of Congress who lost re-election. And at that point, I could have gone on to do a lot of different things. I could go work for another politician. I could go work for the news media. I used to do that, by the way. Don't hold that against me. There were a lot of opportunities. And I had a lunch with Ralph and with Morris. And both of them encouraged me to become part of an effort to start a new free market think tank in the state of Idaho, the Idaho Freedom Foundation. And through that encouragement, we actually started. Heather Lauer, Brianna LeClaire, and myself started the Idaho Freedom Foundation. And ever since then, I've been listening to Ralph's steady advice about how to promote free markets, how to fight back against big government, how to promote those free market solutions, and to make, as Ralph would like to say, make statism unpopular. As you well know, Ralph is well regarded for a reader board he has in Caldwell, Farm City, which it's a beautiful thing. Constantly promoting the values that all of us believe are the key to our country's future. And Ralph, you know, it sounds a little bit arrogant of me to say this, and I don't mean it that way. To me, he's much more of a friend. He's somewhat of a mentor. He's given out books to many people. I'm not unique in that regard. But when I read the books that Ralph brings me and read The Proper Role of Government, and we have a chance to talk about what this country was, what it is, and what it has the potential to be, I feel truly inspired and motivated. And I think you'll also know that there are very few people in the state of Idaho who have had as much influence over the last 50 some odd years in promoting freedom and liberty as Ralph Sneed. So without further ado, Ralph, if you'll come on stage, this is the Friend of Freedom Lifetime Achievement Award. Mr. Sneed would like to say a few words to you.
Thank you all. I appreciate the applause. You're going to get applause a little more than you deserve one applause, because you get hell of a applause, you don't deserve that either. So anyway, I get some of it through correspondence. I'd always know somebody arguing that I'm always right. But anyway, I just want to leave you with one thought, because I know which one of us is wrong, Paul. But I just did want to say one thing. I want to tell you how much if we weighed $1 trillion $1 paper bills, $1 trillion, if you had them one at a time, now if you add them all up and weighed, they'd weigh just 102,311 tons more than 1,000,000 tons. Now, if you don't get anything else here tonight, remember that. 1,000,000 tons plus 102,311 tons of paper dollars. That's $1 trillion. $1 trillion. You can do the rest. Thanks a lot.
you get anything else out of tonight, I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it, but some of you youngsters who are in this room, I hope you remember that we need you. We need you to be engaged in this fight for as long as Ralph has been engaged in this fight. And if you can do that, we will win this country back. With that, I want to introduce to you another champion of freedom. Elizabeth Allen Podge has been in the fight for a very long time. She's a former state legislator, used to work for U.S. Senator Steve Sims, and was a very close friend of the late, great Helen Chenoweth. Please welcome my friend and friend of freedom, Elizabeth Allen Podge.
Congressman Ron Paul of Texas enjoys a national reputation as the premier advocate for liberty in politics today. Dr. Paul is a leading spokesman in Washington for limited constitutional government, low taxes, free markets, and a return to sound monetary policies based on commodity-backed currency. He is known among both his colleagues in Congress and his constituents for his consistent voting record in the House of Representatives. Dr. Paul never votes for legislation until the proposed measure is expressly authorized by the Constitution. In the words of former Treasury Secretary William Simon, Dr. Paul is the one exception to the gang of 535 on Capitol Hill. Ron Paul was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He graduated from Gettysburg College and the Duke University of Medicine before proudly serving as a flight surgeon in the U.S. Air Force during the 1960s. He and his wife Carol moved to Texas in 1968, where he began his medical practice in Brazoria County. As a specialist in OB/GYN, Dr. Paul has delivered more than 4,000 babies. He and Carol, who reside in Lake Jackson, Texas, are the proud parents of 5 children and have 18 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, and 1 on the way. That deserves an applause right here. While serving in Congress during the late 1970s and early 1980s, Dr. Paul's limited government ideals were not popular in Washington. He served on the House Banking Committee, where he was a strong advocate of sound monetary policy and an outspoken critic of the Federal Reserve's inflationary measures. He also was a key member of the Gold Commission, advocating the return to a gold standard for our currency. He was an unwavering advocate of pro-life and pro-family values. Dr. Paul consistently voted to lower or abolish federal taxes, spending, and regulation, and used his House seat to actively promote the return of government to its proper constitutional level. In 1984, he voluntarily relinquished his House seat and returned to his medical practice. Dr. Paul returned to Congress in 1997 to represent the 14th Congressional District of Texas. He serves on the House Financial Services Committee, the International Relations Committee, and the Joint Economic Committee. On the Financial Services Committee, Representative Paul serves as the Vice Chairman of the Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee. He continues to advocate for dramatic reduction in the size of federal government and a return to constitutional principles. Dr. Paul is the author of several books, the most recent being End the Fed and Revolution. And we will have a book signing after this presentation this evening. He has been a distinguished counselor to the Ludwig von Mises Institute and is widely quoted by scholars and writers in the fields of monetary policy, banking, and political economy. He has received many awards and honors during his career in Congress from organizations such as the National Taxpayers Union, Citizens Against Government Waste, the Council for a Competitive Economy, Young Americans for Freedom, and countless others. Dr. Paul's consistent voting record prompted one congressman to comment that, quote, Ron Paul personifies the Founding Fathers' ideal of the citizen statesman. He makes it clear that his principles will never be compromised, and they never are. Another congressman added, there are few people in public life who through thick and thin, rain or shine, stick to their principles. Ron Paul is one of those few. As an example, here are the Ron Paul freedom principles. Rights belong to individuals, not groups. Property should be owned by people, not government. All voluntary associations should be permissible, economic and social. The government's monetary role is to maintain the integrity of the monetary unit, not participate in fraud. Government exists to protect liberty, not to redistribute wealth or to grant special privileges. The lives and actions of people are their own responsibility, not the government. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and a privilege to introduce our speaker. Please join the Conservative Students Coalition, the Idaho Freedom Foundation, the Idahoans for Liberty, the Campaign for Liberty, Young Americans for Liberty, and all liberty-loving Idahoans, along with the Idaho Rights Committee, in welcoming our Congressman, Ron Paul.
Introduction. She mentioned how many children and grandchildren we have, and somebody asked me once if I know all their names. I said, yeah, I know all their names. I said, my wife even knows all their birthdays, which I do not. But when Elizabeth called and invited me out, I knew it was going to be a worthwhile invitation because it's a worthwhile state. It's a great state. If I'm not mistaken, I think Idaho gave me the greatest percentage vote in the last election. When she called, I gave her all the reasons why I wouldn't be able to come. And she says, it's for Ralph. Ralph's going to have a little bit of presentation. You know, Ralph, and actually that had a lot of influence because I've known Ralph for a long time, and he really is a good example of what individuals can do on their own, standing up and sometimes lonely. And right now, today, just the announcement of all the groups that are involved, it's so different. 20, 30, 40 years ago, there were very few groups, and individuals had to stand up and promote these views. That certainly was an influence. But then I asked her, I said, is there any chance that you can get 100 or 200 students together so I can come visit? She says, I think I can. So it looks like we can't see out there because it's so dark, but I'm assuming that there's at least 100 or 200 students out there. With that nice applause, it sounds to me like the revolution is alive and well in Idaho. That's more than I can say from Washington, D.C. Someday the revolution is going to reach D.C., but right now we still have a job before us. But things are shifting. Sentiments are shifting. There's reason to be optimistic. You can't look at what you do in Washington. As mentioned earlier on the disaster last weekend, believe me, I wasn't feeling so good. Not only because of the vote, but what bothered me a lot was the excitement, like those who had just passed it, like they had just achieved some miraculous solution to all our problems, and I just really couldn't understand that. Not only that, the passage of that, it wouldn't be so bad. Staying away from home for 2 weeks straight, we would do something decent. But being there and listening to that after about 2 weeks, boy, I was glad to get out of there. I was glad to get to Idaho as soon as I could. But you know, the medical debate is a significant debate. It's obviously going in the wrong direction. It's not brand new. Early on, I was asking them constantly, what do you think is going to happen? I said, probably they won't get everything. They won't get the whole package, but they're going to make it worse. Americans are adapted to incrementalism. And we've been putting up with incrementalism in all areas, and in particular in medicine. We've been involved for a long time. Right after World War II, they talked about starting programs. They tried to socialize medicine back then. They started things like Hill-Burton, which was meant they would send out money and build hospitals. And then Eisenhower, a Republican, gets a new Department of Health and Human Health, HEW, Health, Education, and Welfare. And then in the 60s, we had Medicare and Medicaid, and onwards every decade there's something else, Republican or Democrat. That's why we need more constitutionalists that would look at this in a principled manner and say the federal government doesn't have business running Medicare. Going up, but you don't have to worry because we've been assured that with this bill we can put 30 million more people on the rolls. The government's going to pay for their medical care, and it's not going to cost anything. Not only that, it's going to lower the deficit. If you believe that, if many of you believe that, I'm probably in the wrong audience, but I know you don't believe it because hardly anybody in the country believes it. The ones who want it are just hoping and praying they can get something from somebody else, and if somebody has more than they have, they can get it. But one of the basic flaws that we have, not only with medicine, but with so many things in Washington, there's no basic understanding about rights. Rights are, you have to understand this, you have to realize that we have a right to our life, we have a right to our liberty, and we should have a right to keep the fruits of our labor. Creator, and they don't come from the government. I've heard said many times on the House floor, as well as on the interviews by those in opposition, saying the American people have a right to education, they have a right to medical care. They don't. They do not have a right because it is the, if that were true, if the government had this obligation to give somebody an entitlement of Medicare, medical care, or education, that means that since that person doesn't have a right to it, it means that it destroys rights because the government has to take it from somebody. So they're undermining rights. So it's actually opposite of what they say. But once you have that definition, the sky's the limit. But then you say, well, won't the Constitution limit what they do? No, it doesn't. Is it because they don't follow their oath of office? According to them, they do. They just read the Constitution differently. They read into it and they say the General Welfare Clause gives me the responsibility of passing out welfare to everybody. And also, they say the Interstate Commerce Clause does. They lose no sleep over it. They've been taught for decades now that that's what that means, that the 9th and 10th Amendment doesn't mean anything, but we want to change that attitude shortly and show them that it does mean something. But the whole idea that somebody has a right to something else is really the source of so much of our trouble. Now, there are several things that we have done in Washington and in our country that have undermined the concept that it's your life, it's your responsibility, it's your life and you're responsible to your God, and it's your life and you're responsible to yourself and your family, your friends, your neighbors. And not to the government, and the government doesn't assume these responsibilities. But there are several things that have distorted that viewpoint. The medical care is one of them. This assumption that the government is to take care of you from cradle to grave and make big decisions about what medical care you get and what end-of-life processes there are, that means they have turned the government into the parent and the individual control over all that we do. Ralph Smith likes to call that statism. It is statism, and it's the worst way. It's an authoritarian approach, and it's that principle that we have to reverse. There are other things that establishes the basic understanding that the government owns us. One is the income tax. The income tax is the worst of all taxes, but very close to that, of course, is the inflation tax. But we care about individual rights and personal liberty, we wouldn't have an income tax, because even if the income tax is low, like it started off, and they said, oh, it's only going to be 1% on the wealthy. Sure, it may have started that way, but look what it has morphed into. But the basic assumption of an income tax is that the government owns all your income, and then they grant you so much permission to keep a percentage. This is why even in Washington today, and conservatives have slipped into this language, and they'll say, oh, all right, we're going to give you a tax cut, and that's going to be a cost to government. No, it's not a cost to government. We're just returning what you earned and you should have kept in the first place. Idea of the government taking over medical care tells you who owns us. I think the income tax does, but there's one other thing that emphasizes this point. It's not in place today, but the potential there, and that is the concept of conscription or a draft. This means that individuals belong to the state, and we haven't used the draft, and that's good. People turned against the draft after Vietnam. But we still have the registration for the draft. So I think if we were a true republic and we didn't want to have unnecessary wars where you had to draft people, you wouldn't even have the registration of the draft, or we should never conscript people And I believe we outlawed involuntary servitude, so someday we'll maybe have to refine that concept. But there is this basic understanding about rights that has to be reversed if we expect to get our republic back, because the purpose of a republic, the purpose of our Constitution, should be very simple. It should be for the preservation of liberty. That should be the purpose of government. Today, the role of government has expanded so you can't even number the things that the government is involved in. You can hardly do a thing without permission. We don't own our land anymore. We have technical ownership, but if you own the land, you could control it. You wouldn't have to ask the government permission. You wouldn't have to pay rent to stay on your land. And that's essentially what taxes are. We pay huge taxes. We can't do anything with it. We have to and the rules start from the local community up to the federal government, and who knows, there's even an listen of the United Nations in trying to tell us what we can do with our land, and we shouldn't permit that either. But because government has assumed this role that is absolutely unconstitutional, we have huge government. But we have been living with a set of economic theories that are completely fallacious. They don't work, they're wrong, and they violate all the principles of free markets. And that is that our people in this country for decades now, especially since the Depression, have been taught Keynesian economics. Keynesian economics, unfortunately, is strongly bipartisan. You know, they talk about bipartisanship. There are days when I think we have way too much bipartisanship because of the things that we do. Despite the economic theories of Keynes is very bipartisan, and right now we're in a recession, which was a predictable recession. When the Federal Reserve inflates and distorts, there always has to be a correction, and we're in the middle of that. But what did Keynes say we should do when we have an economic downturn? He never admits it's caused by the government. It's always capitalism that was at fault. So the Keynes would say, you know what you should do is spend more money, have more deficits, borrow more money, and print more money, and regulate more. And then you ask the question, well, how did we get into this now? We spent too much money, we borrowed too much money, we printed too much money, and we regulated too much. The financial bubble that is trying to unwind right now over great resistance against the Federal Reserve. Actually, this bubble, I believe, started in 1971 when the last link to gold was removed and everything's been a bubble building and building. I am convinced that we are in the midst of the early correction of the biggest bubble in the history of the world, and that there's still a long, long way to go. The monetary creation and all has just been so gigantic. Just think of what was required to keep this from, rapidly deflating. And that was $2 trillion by the Federal Reserve. Ralph was mentioning about how much $1 trillion weigh. Today we don't have to weigh. That's a good example. But the whole thing is, Bernanke and his crowd created $2 trillion within weeks and spent it, and we're not even allowed to know where he spent it. It's time to audit the Fed. And after we audit the Fed, the people of this country will know it's time to... around for us, because the one thing is, as powerful as they are, and as influential they are, ultimately economic law rules in the end. And economic law and the government is competing. Economic law says when there are mistakes made, when there's too much government, too much regulations, the economic law says you have to back off, you have to pay the debt, you have to work harder, and get back to the basics and get back to the fundamentals. But the government says, no, you can't do that. So everything the Fed and the Treasury and the Congress has done, and both parties have done it, this started from the last administration, was they were trying to prevent the correction. So we knew the housing bubble was there. The Austrian free market economists have warned about this for years and years, and how much trouble it was going to cause. So what is the policies of our government today? Well, the inflation caused the housing prices to go up, and everybody thought that was good, so they borrowed more and more money. Everybody was supposed to have a house, and we had this Community Reinvestment Act, no down payments, the whole works. The emphasis of buy, more, prices get too high, so the market says they have to come down. So what have our policies been since the crash started? To keep the prices of houses very high, and to get the builders to build more houses. Well, you don't need that. You need fewer houses, and you need the prices to go down as quickly as possible and get it over with. If people make an argument about that, say, what do you have against poor people? There are a few poor people out there to save their money. Prices go down. Maybe some of these poor people can buy their house now instead of you artificially keeping them out. And I get after Bernanke all the time for various reasons, but the one thing I press him on whenever the subject comes up, and that has to do with his fixing of interest rates. He has no right to fix interest rates. Why should he fix interest rates at less than 1% for his banking friends? But if you have to go borrow, you're going to pay a lot more. But because he regulates and has a lot to do with interest rates, who does it really hurt? It hurts really the people who save, who want to take care of themselves. What if you're on a fixed income? What about the retired people? What if you don't want to be in the stock market, and you don't have apartments to live off of? You want to have your money in a CD. What right does the Federal Reserve have to fix that price and get it down to 1 or 2% in income when the market would say you deserve 6 or 7%? That's wrong, and we shouldn't permit it to happen. The economy, obviously, is very weak. They try to talk us into believing that when it's just around the corner, it's going to come back to healthy growth again. The GDP is up. The GDP is up a little bit, but the truth is, if government spends money, if they spend the money on something like a tank or a bomb, that goes into the GDP. But what happens to the tank or the bomb? It goes someplace and gets blown up. The country doesn't get wealthier. Somebody made some profits building it. The war profiteers make some money, but that goes into the GDP. So the whole thing is the more money the government spends, the more money they borrow, and the more money they print, the higher the GDP goes up. So it's not a good number to look at, and it doesn't represent economic growth. economic growth comes from people working hard, savings. Savings has to create the capital. Capital can't come out of a computer. And this is the fallacy of the economics that we have followed. Low interest rates is supposed to indicate there's a lot of savings, and it's an indication that investors can buy and build houses and go out and do major investment. But when interest rates are very low and there's no savings, where do they get the money? Of course, it comes out of thin air, and that's how you get all the mistakes made and all the debt, the pyramiding of debt, and that's where the bubble comes from. It is understandable. It has been explained very well. Mises explained it back as early as 1912 and predicted the Depression of the 1930s, as well as so many of the Austrians predicted exactly what's happening now. And the other day I was talking to Geithner, Secretary of Treasury, about this, arguing the case for the Austrian economists. I said, they've been right all along, and they've made these predictions. Why don't you go and ask the Austrian economists what to do right now? That's what they are doing. One of the other major changes that has occurred over these decades, not only in economic policy, but it's also in the political sense of what's happening with the power structures. The founders were geniuses in devising a system of separation and balance of powers. Not only the three branches of government, but as well as the separations of powers among the states. I mean, there was supposed to be very limited power to the federal government, and it was supposed to be strictly limited by Article 1, Section 8, saying you can't do anything else other than Article 1, Section 8, and to make sure you don't, the 9th and 10th Amendment was put in, and therefore everything else was reserved for the states and to the people. But we are so far gone from that. You know, since all throughout the 20th century, the undermining of the principle of the states' rights issue, they turned that into a nasty word, that the sovereignty of the states have been literally undermined. That is why this whole movement right now of the states getting very frightened and very fed up, saying it's time to re-emphasize the principle of nullification in the 10th Amendment. You know, we talk a lot, more recently now, about nullification. The federal government, or the state government's nullifying the federal laws that are unconstitutional. And I, of course, think that is very good. But there is another principle that's available to all of us now. And if you haven't studied this, you really should, because it's available to every single person in this room who ever has or might serve on a jury. It's called jury nullification. Founding, the judges would routinely advise the jurors that they had the right to judge the facts of the case and the law itself. It was supposed to be the last resistance against bad laws. You had the House, and you had the Senate, and you had the President, and you had the courts, but still bad laws can get through. So if you have bad laws and you're on a jury, then you should have the right to be the last judge on whether this person should be punished under certain laws. And that principle should be reestablished. It was certainly part of our early history. But the other shift. The other shift in power is something that I've thought about a lot, and it gets worse all the time. And that is the shortcomings of the Congress. Congress should be the most important body in the government. The Congress, the Capitol is on a hill, and it's the highest point, and they said it was there on purpose. It's higher than the Supreme Court, it's higher than the White House. And it's supposed to be the greatest protector of the freedoms of the individuals, and that's why you're supposed to have a crack at all members of Congress every 2 years. And maybe this year, a lot of you will be happy you're getting a crack at every member of Congress. But the Congress systematically, as a reflection, once again, I believe, to the educational system, just as the education teaches us bad economics, they teach us bad constitutional law, and they have taught us that it's important to have a strong executive. And there seems to be an irresistible urge for anybody who becomes president to assume more and more power. And I think the founders understood that would be a possibility. That's why they put so much power into the Congress. They never dreamed that Congress not only would have some of those powers taken away by the courts and the presidents, the executive branch, they never believed that the Congress would hand it to them on a platter. That is what's so wrong. Just think of this little episode on the fight for right to life in the medical bill. You know, the argument was going on about the Hyde Amendment and whether it was going to be in or out. So the settlement was, well, it's so controversial, we might not get the bill passed if it's in here, but we're going to accomplish the same thing. What we'll do is we'll just have the president write an executive order. And that's what they do. This whole principle of executive orders is not right. You can write executive orders to carry out proper executive functions, but not writing executive orders to write law. That's never been done. The administrative courts and the administrative departments, they write regulations routinely. Thousands and thousands of pages of regulations. There's laws. And the Congress, could override them, but they never do. They create agencies of government. The one agency I wish we really would curtail is the agency called the IRS that writes these regulations. But we have reneged on that responsibility. The powers have been transferred. Another good example of this transfer of power occurred in 2002. In the march up to war, the invasion of Iraq. So the idea came up, we're supposed to go into Iraq, which if you don't know, I strongly opposed. I thought it was wrong. What the Congress did is they passed a little resolution and said, well, Mr. President, you know more than we do, just because the Constitution says that only Congress can declare war. We're going to ignore that. We're going to deliver to you this power. And if you think it's necessary to do it, you can go do it. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But we're going to let you make the decision. We have really, even before that, have given the presidents a waged war. We didn't declare war in Korea or Vietnam and all these other little wars and big wars, constant wars. It's all done just by a declaration by the president. Paul Begala worked for Bill Clinton. He had a saying about what executive orders were. He says, stroke of the pen, law of the land, kind of cool. I mean, that is so bad. And that is the attitude. But how do we get this back again? Well, if we had a proper Congress, we would take it back. But have the people put enough pressure on the Congress to do this? How many people have raised Cain, about going to war without declarations? And how many people have raised Cain about the administrative law and all these regulations? But we're getting to the point where the people are waking up and they're getting sick and tired of it, and they're getting out there ready to do something. That has to shift, that has to go back in these other directions, and the other area that I think we have really slipped on, and this is a bipartisan shortcoming, and that is a true understanding of civil liberties. Conservatives, I think, are frequently at fault of saying, well, we have a responsibility to make people behave better. And that's a good idea. I think people should behave better, and that would be good. But if you have certain personal habits that I don't like, I don't have a right to change them if you're not hurting anybody else. If you disagree with me on religious views, most Americans agree with that. They say yes, and some religious views are bizarre and they're different, but if their religious views aren't hurting people and it's not driving people and injuring them, then people have a right to their religious views. You have a right to your religious views and your intellectual views. Why don't you have a right to decide what you put in your own body? Not too long ago, somebody came to my office and they talked to me about raw milk. And I said, I don't drink raw milk, but what's the problem? They said, well, there's government regulations and they tell you that they're putting roadblocks in us buying and selling and drinking raw milk. And I said, well, I'll introduce a bill and let people, get the government out of the way. I said, I don't know that much about the pros and cons of drinking raw milk, but I'll tell you what. I know the pros and cons of a free society. In a free society, you have the right to drink raw milk if you want. The problem with defending civil liberties is the fact that some people do things that you don't like, and that is true. And you should never accept the idea that because you allow somebody to do something that you endorse what they do. That is not it. Just because you have the freedom of religion, you don't endorse that religion. So what people do with their lives, the danger of regulating personal habits is that they will regulate everything else you do. So we have two groups in Washington. One group wants to regulate personal habits and tell you how to be a better person. Another group wants to regulate the economy and tell you how to have a fair, equal society economically. I would say the Constitution and the principles of liberty would suggest very strongly that maybe we ought to have freedom of choice in both areas. In foreign policy, we've been told many years that if there's any problem in foreign policy, you have to be bipartisan. You have to support the other side. You're not allowed to criticize, especially anything overseas. But I don't think that's correct. I think you can do it with in a proper manner and proper decorum. But foreign policy is pretty darn important. And I think the founders had it right. They were very clear on it. The early presidents spoke out clearly. They said that we should have friendship with all nations, trade with all nations, and we should mind our own business and don't get involved in the internal affairs of other countries. Sides. We pick sides so often. We're involved in the middle of everything. Right now, our administration is getting along with Pakistan a little bit better than usual. So now we're going to send them weapons. Over there. Do they need more weapons in the Middle East? We're the biggest weapons manufacturer in the world. We ourselves spend more money on our own military than all the other countries put together. And you know what they'd like you to believe if you're a conservative and you haven't thought this through? They'll say, oh, we got to do that. If you don't do that, you're not patriotic. You're un-American. You can't cut a penny from military. And they include in the military and national security all foreign aid. Well, my position on foreign aid is simply what the Constitution said. There's no authority for foreign aid. I wouldn't vote for any of that. Has gotten us into big problems, and if you take the position that yes, it's a dangerous world, we need to be out there, we need to protect ourselves, and we need troops here and there, I'll tell you what, the fiscal argument is bearing down on you because we don't have the money, we can't afford it. To maintain our empire today costs us $1 trillion a year. That could go a long way if that was pumped back in the economy. We could cut income tax, people in your office using it. We're everywhere in the world where we have 750 bases. We're in 135 countries. We've had troops in Korea since I was in high school. And that was a long time ago. And one place where we couldn't stay because we didn't do so well fighting the war, we left Vietnam. But what has happened in Vietnam? Was there the domino theory? The reason I was in the military at that time, the domino theory, and I sort of bought into that. Oh yeah, the Chinese and the Russians are going to take over and the world will be communist. Well, you know what's happened is the Chinese have become our bankers. And we trade with Vietnam. We go back and forth to Vietnam. We have achieved so much more in westernizing Vietnam in peace than we did accomplish in all that war in Vietnam. During the Cold War, there were a lot of nuclear weapons. 40,000 to Soviets, we probably had 30,000. We had intercontinental ballistic missiles, and it was dangerous. And the missiles were even put in Cuba, and it was the Cuban crisis that had me called up. That was when the draft did get me, and I was called up. But the world was very dangerous. It's still very dangerous. But, you know, how many nuclear weapons do you need? But why now are we so obsessed with one country in the Middle East called Iran that they might someday get a nuclear weapon? Which is a possibility. They might someday get a nuclear weapon. But can they be more dangerous than the Soviets and the Chinese when we were having this cold and hot war with the Chinese? Yes, it would be bad. But let me tell you, it's not going to be any more dangerous than us going over there and bombing their sites because we don't want them to have a weapon. Perhaps you're trying to say, oh no, you were wrong, you were cautioned, you didn't want to go over there. And look at the wonderful things. They've had elections now in Iraq, and everything is wonderful. Not so. The election hasn't solved anything yet. The mess in Afghanistan, the news is not nearly as good as I'd like to tell you about.
Unjust war is murder.
And this is going to go on unless we change it. But it will change probably financially. Empires end for financial reasons. That's the way the Soviets finally lost. We didn't have to fight them. It collapsed. But there was one issue that came up on the foreign policy during the debates that I was very emphatic on, and I want to repeat my position on this. They asked what was the moral position on foreign policy that annoyed me the most. And I said the thing that bothers me the most is this country has slipped into believing that we have the moral right and an obligation to start the wars. That there is such a thing that in our best interest that we start preventive wars. That is aggression. We don't need to do it. It's not part of what America is all about. Hopefully that will change. I hope it changes before we have our total bankruptcy and we have to quit for financial reasons. But there's no reason why we can't have a new generation come up and look at this differently. I don't like all these treaties, these obligations that we have. What right does a generation 10, 20, 30 years ago put on the burden of an 18-year-old that might be drafted, that if one little bomb drops between two places and there's a border dispute, that we've signed a treaty that committed you to war? No, that's not right. It's more difficult to defend our country when we build our enemies, and our foreign policy helps drive up the number of enemies that we have. And this is a difficult subject because there's still the majority of Americans, I think, are very anxious to have a presence because they feel good about it. And they think that you have to have a position of strength. But let me tell you, it takes a position of strength to stand up to nonsense also. And that's what's happened since they try to tell you that if you don't take this position of militancy, that you're a weakling. But I think what you have to do is decide what is right and use your strength and convictions to stand up for those right things. You know, I stated that the purpose of all political action, the purpose that we all get involved in, is for the protection of liberty. And I think that is very important. But what is the purpose of liberty? I think there's a precise purpose, that the things that you achieve when you have a free society. I think our personal goals ought to be seeking virtue, seeking excellence, and seeking the responsibility to have economic prosperity for ourselves, and taking the responsibility of taking care of ourselves. So if that is the goal and that's achieved in a free society, then that is what we should have. But we have now, of course, turned so many of these responsibilities over to the government. The government's going to take care of us, from cradle to grave, and they will make us virtuous, and they will make us prosperous, and everything will be equal, and we will all be taken care of. I'll tell you what, every time you deliver one of those responsibilities to the government, it undermines liberty. When it undermines liberty, it means that you are giving in to the totalitarians, and you're giving in to the instincts of always those few who love to lord it over other people. I've been very pleased with what has happened in the last couple of years. I've been talking about these issues for a long time, and quite frankly thought that I would do that and soon go back to Texas, or go back to practice in medicine, or whatever. And my goal was that not much would come up, and that I would try to leave a record. I would do my best to make it the best record possible on the way I think we should vote and what the Constitution said. So I was surprised to a large degree that there were so many young people who were very receptive to these views, and that there were others a little bit older that had remembered these views and had been very interested. I never believed there were so many, and the numbers are growing by leaps and bounds. There is something very exciting. Just as I said about the emphasis on the Federal Reserve, the interest came because of the crisis that hit. Now we're having a crisis of confidence in the government. They can't deliver what they tell us they will do. The conditions will get worse, so more and more people are going to say, what is going on? But the wonderful thing is we have some traditions that we can look to. We can even have a constitution. We don't have to write a new constitution. All we have to do is raise up a group of people, and young people will say, yes, the founders were on the right track. Let's read the Constitution. Let's follow the Constitution. We got into trouble by avoiding and not obeying the Constitution. We can solve almost all our problems by obeying the Constitution. I've come to the conclusion in these last couple of years that indeed freedom is still very popular. So freedom has been around for a bit. The real test of freedom has been just a couple hundred years old. There's been bits and pieces over the centuries. But it really, the grand experiment was here with our Constitution and our early history. And what I fear is that we have given up on it. That we have decided that either lack of understanding or lack of confidence, that we no longer believe in it. And I see that as a tragedy. But if we do the right thing, if we can energize enough people, and it is not true that you have to wait until 51% of the people agree with us that this is a good idea. Because 51% or 60% or 80% of the people never have strong views. And that's the way it is even in Washington. Attitudes are important, but if you have 3 or 4 or 5% of people determined like you to go out and present these views, study and understand them, and take a job upon yourself to spread this message, it can have an effect. What you do is very important, and what you do is going to be different one from another. Some will become teachers, and some will become writers, and some will go into the media, and some people will get into politics. There's all kinds of things. The most important thing is to study it and understand and have convictions and believe in it. If you do, there will be a role to play. If you come around to the concluding that this is an important period of in our history, and that we have the proper answers by defending liberty, if If you come to that conclusion, your life is going to be very miserable if you don't do something. Because the responsibility is going to fall on your shoulders because most people don't care. And if you do, you're going to feel more responsible. But most people find something to do. And I have dozens and dozens of people call up and say, well, because you made the suggestion, I'm doing this, I started this. But it is important to understand, the issues. I'm convinced it took me 20 years, I'm a slow learner, to unlearn all the things I was taught, that I thought were wrong. It's hard to get the bad stuff out of your mind. And so many of us have been conditioned by bad economic policies and compromising the Constitution. But I don't think it takes that long anymore. Because we live in a magnificent age. And that is the internet age. This is fantastic. This is fantastic because the information spreads so quickly. The organization, the campaign we were in, the organization was spontaneous and people got excited and we didn't have central economic planning and it worked pretty well. And I think it's going to continue that way. In the old days, it was hard to get the information. But there's an explosion of information, an explosion of interest in the freedom philosophy today, and the interest is going to grow because the necessity is there. Because every single day there's going to be more and more people recognize that there are serious problems here in the government that we have in Washington. They're not giving us our answers, and we do have better answers, and we better send them a strong message. One of the things I like best about freedom philosophy is I consider it a philosophy that brings people together. I can't see you out there, and there's different kinds of people, but very often people come and they look different, they're different ages, they have different philosophies, different religions, but if you really understand freedom, what the person sitting next to you looks like and what they do or what they believe in personally doesn't matter. Because all of a sudden, we're not competing with them. We're not challenging. We don't want to tell them what to do. We don't want to tell them how to live. We don't want to tell them how to spend their money. But if we want to improve our society, it has to be through persuasion. I want the goodness of America to be spread around the world, but I don't want it to be spread with a gun. It doesn't work. Whether it's domestic or international, can be spread by setting good examples. If we do an excellent job here of portraying what liberty is about, have a prosperous economy and sound money and recognizing personal liberties, and it's very successful, I should say, maybe we ought to try that. Maybe these ideas can be spread, and they can be. In this day and age, these ideas spread internationally. We'd be surprised how many communications I get around the world. And this would have never happened even 10, 15 years ago. So there's sort of spreading like prairie fire on these views. So there's very many reasons why we should be optimistic, why we should be energized, why we should do even more. But we should also be very concerned if we don't do it, things won't work out so well. And we are at a crucial point. I don't think it's like a crucial point that everything hangs on the election of this November. I don't see it quite like that. But we're in a transition point where in the next few years this major decision will be made by the people. The type of government a country has reflects the prevailing attitude of the people. And up until now, the prevailing attitude has been welfareism and warfareism and fiat money and all these things. But what I suspect is the prevailing attitude is quickly changing, and I am delighted that I can play a small part in this, and I invite you to play a major part in it and continue this fight to restore liberty to this country. Thank you very much.
those comm classes I took kick in here. I'm Gerald Dalebout, and my name is Kyle Gray, and we're with Young Americans for Liberty at the University of Idaho, and we've are you guys inspired? A little less than a year ago, I went over to Seattle and heard Dr. Paul speak, and it inspired me to go back to Moscow. And, you know, I started a club to find this guy, and we've been wreaking a lot of havoc in the name of liberty for the University of Idaho in the last about 8 months. And so, if there's any of you out here that are inspired and you want to start a club on the campus here at BSU, and you want to join a club, start a club, whatever you want to do, I really just, I tell you right now that you should get on it. If you would have told me 8 months ago that we'd be up here with Dr. Paul, like I would have been like, yeah, right, seriously. But in either case, Dr. Paul, it's our pleasure and privilege to present this, a token of our appreciation for all that you've done and all you're doing to preserve liberty and to support the Constitution. We in Idaho want you to know that when you speak for state sovereignty, for private property rights and limited constitutional government, you not only represent the good people of Texas, but you represent us as well. So this plaque was made using wood from an oak tree planted by President Benjamin Harrison in 1891 on the grounds of the territorial capital. This tree had to be removed in 2007 to make room for the new Capitol wings. On May 27, 2008, Idaho gave Congressman Ron Paul his best result of the 2008 presidential primary campaign. Idaho is Ron Paul country.
At the beginning of the month, on March 2nd, we had a primary in Texas, and I had a couple opponents filed against me. And I thought, wow, you know, they're even coming after me. I'm an incumbent, so what's this going to be like? So I thought, after worrying, I thought, well, if I lose, I'll move to Idaho. I was sneak out post victory with 81%.
Good evening, everybody. Is this on? All right. I'm Trevor Gregg. I'm the student body president here at Boise State, and thank you. And on behalf of Boise State, I would like to welcome Dr. Ron Paul, Congressman Ron Paul, to our university this evening. I will be conducting the question and answer session. Beforehand, we had all of you fill out questions that you had for Dr. Paul, so we'll take a few minutes now to ask a few of those questions. And I've got it here in my pocket. So hopefully I can read your guys' handwriting. The first question we picked, it comes from a youngster, a young guy. And it says, how do you become a politician? What is required?
Well, if you really, people do ask me that a lot, and they put it down, how can I get involved and go to Congress? And my answer, generally, if you want to be a politician or get into Congress, is don't set that as your goal. I think that should be your secondary goal. The first one is what I mentioned. You have to know the issues, and you have to make yourself available, and it might lead to a political career. But too many people want to set the goal of being a congressman. They think it's just organization work. They think that, oh, how do I go through precinct work, and I go to state, and then the Senate, and then run for Congress, and how do you raise the money, and all that. I don't think that is a good idea. I think that if you know the issues, somebody will make good use of you, and you may end up with a political career. But I don't think that should be the goal. That should be secondary.
that leads us into the next question very well. Why stay Republican? Both parties have failed the people.
Yes.
It really wasn't a question. The person was more of a statement. Both parties have failed the people.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I sort of answered that in the talk. And that is, it's been too bipartisan because they both endorse the same ideas. That's why I emphasize study, understand the issues and the difference. Basically, we have been conditioned over many, many years that an interventionist foreign policy, a monetary policy of fiat currency, a welfare state based on a distorted view of rights has been endorsed by both sides because our intellectual community did. The intellectual community is very important, but I think that is what is changing, and then maybe but you know, if there isn't, when the true revolution comes, actually it won't be partisan. You know, let's say we have these views infiltrate, it will affect both parties. The bad ideas affected both parties. Right now, what we need are the good ideas to affect both parties.
Again, a question for the youth here. For younger people that don't know a lot or don't have courage, how can they stand up for others and to the government?
Well, I guess everybody stands up in different ways. I think you can't stand up unless you have confidence. And sometimes, you know, it's difficult. But what sustains me, because I think I have a bit of a record in Washington for the number of times I voted by myself. But, you know, I get my strength from that by conviction that others have been, you know, by trying to weigh the other people's views and coming up and making a decision what I think is right or wrong and the interpretation of the Constitution. So a lot of people point out my shortcomings in my delivery and different things, and there are some shortcomings. But one thing I am convinced of are the views are correct, and that gives me my strength.
What are your thoughts about repealing the 17th Amendment?
A good idea. That won't happen until we get back to the whole concept that we have a loose-knit group of states together and that we don't have a centralized government. So that will come someday if we eventually win back the entire revolution.
Do you believe the Iranians are building a nuclear bomb, and if so, what should the U.S. do about it?
I think they would like to, and I think they would like the potential to do it. I don't think they're on the verge of doing it. Our CIA said the last time they had evidence that they were working on a nuclear bomb was in 2003. But they're surrounded by nuclear weapons. Israel has them, Pakistan has them, India has them, Russia has them, the United States have ships on their borders that were loaded with them, so they're totally surrounded. So if for some reason they got one, I would treat them like I treated the Soviets, you know, with willingness to talk and work with people, because the Iranians aren't, if they get one or two or three or four, what are they going to do with them? Are they going to launch them toward Israel, the United States? I mean, the country would be gone in minutes. They're not likely to do that. All they are looking for is a little bit of respect. I mean, I know. I think the war drums are beaten, and they want to get the people riled up so that you're ready to put on, they're ready to put on tough sanctions. Who suffers with the tough sanctions? You know, we've had sanctions on Cuba for 40 years, and I mean, it's time to get rid of sanctions and trade with Cuba and travel with Cuba. One problem just make the problems that much worse and punish the people over there and not do much harm to the government.
How do you respond to the critics who say there's not enough gold to support the current money supply for a 100% gold-backed currency?
Well, if you understand that any amount of gold will work, prices just have to adjust. And for 2,000 to 3,000 years that they've been measuring gold production, gold generally increases about 3% a year, 2 to 4, 3% a year, which would sustain it. But as long as your prices adjust, it doesn't matter. If you're not going to carry the gold around, I mean, you just have to have a measurement. It's sort of like asking, how many yardsticks do you need? You know, it's a measurement of value. You can define credit. You know, if GMC is making a loan for a car, you can make that in terms, measure it in terms of gold, but you don't literally have to have the gold for every single transaction. So there is enough gold. Hans Sennholz many years ago wrote an article about this very subject. He convinced me that you don't really have to worry about that. There will be an increase. Milton Friedman, who didn't believe in the gold standard, he picked a number and says, what we need is to get rid of the Federal Reserve and replace it with a computer and let them print money at 3% a year. So it was sort of a paper gold standard, but of course, if a government is given the power to create money at 3% a year, they'll do 4, 5, 6, 7, or whatever.
We only have time for one more question, and the question is, are you running for president in 2012?
No decision has been made on that yet. Thank you. Please give your support. Thank you.
Is Ron Paul awesome or what? So just a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, Dr. Paul will be signing books in the foyer in just a little bit. Second of all, we neglected earlier to mention the great support of the college Republicans and all the other groups that were involved and instrumental in putting this program together. We want to let you know, since you guys are fired up and we know we're going to see you back at future events, on May 15th, Steve Moore will be in Idaho for the first annual Freedom Celebration brought to you by the Idaho Freedom Foundation. Hope you can make it to that. And the college Republicans, I'm sorry, the CSC, the Conservative Student Coalition, is working diligently to bring Thomas Woods to Boise in a very near future. So we hope to have some more exciting programs for you. Guys, again, as Congressman Paul said, if we're going to win our country back, we depend on you. We depend on you guys to help defend this country, defend the Constitution, and those values that made this country great. Thank you all. Have a good night. God bless.